the meeting last week that she already arranged such meeting. I'm wondering if any of you joined to that meeting. Or has it happened?
With that meeting.
Okay. And Tracy is not here, then we can leave it open and ask Tracy when she joins this week or during the next meeting. And the next action item is on me, and I sent that mail to get everyone aware of the white paper we plan to work on and hopefully publish coming months. So I marked that as done, and we have a topic on the agenda for that anyway, so I marked that as done. And the last action item is on actually CD Foundation stuff, Jackie, and I've seen Jackie updated the invitation and the link to this document is available. But unfortunately, when she updated the invitation, Zoom link was removed from the invitation. So I can ask back to Jackie if she can make another update and include the Zoom link as well.
Yeah, because it's really helpful. The Zoom client comes up and alerts you of meetings coming up, and it comes up with this one saying, "This is not a Zoom meeting."
Yeah, I noticed that. Let me close this action and then create a new action item with new issue on GitHub, this time asking to update the location of the meeting with the Zoom link. So it's convenient for people to just click the link or open the Zoom meeting to open. Okay. Now at least we close some action items and we create new ones. And I suppose I haven't forgotten anything. At least it looks like it on the list. And if we continue with the regular agenda, the next item on the agenda is reusable libraries. And again, this is about this Tecton ham tree chart and Go SCM library. And I see Christy joined. Maybe I can ask Christy if she heard anything from Tracy about this Tecton ham tree chart. Or has there been any discussion meeting to continue with that?
I don't know if you can hear me. Oh yeah, I don't think there's been any movement on that. I haven't heard anything new about it.
Christy, you're breaking up really badly.
Okay, chat. Okay, she says she doesn't have any news, so we can. Okay.
Can I just add that I had a preliminary meeting with Tracy and James Rawlings and Mauricio Valentino to discuss the Humphrey chart, and everyone is on board to move forward with it. I haven't seen any of that work being done, like actually progressing it, but Mauricio was quite eager to work on that. So there are people who are definitely on board on helping make this happen. I will put in the chat here. I should put it in. Well, for now, I will put this in the chat, and then I'll add it to the meeting notes. We discussed this particular issue on the process. And Mauricio was one of the commenters on it. He was quite eager to work on this, so that's the reason why he was in the meeting. He's quite engaged to work further on it.
So
the meeting happened last week.
okay, the meeting happened, so I can have that as well. Yeah, I saw it there. Okay, thanks, Tara. Then it's under control. It's happening. And there are people interested working on this, and that's what the topic is about, actually, to get an idea about if anything is happening, and it's great to see something is happening there. Then, yeah, next time when you have an update or anyone looking after this topic can add that topic to agenda, so we don't keep on repeating, asking, questioning people. So then, yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Thanks. Okay, then we move to the next topic. So this white paper, the link is here. Let me open the white paper as well. And as you see on the document, there is not much there actually, just the outline or proposed outline for the paper to see if people are supportive of this idea to go out with white paper to, discuss interoperability in CI/CD domain. And it's simply talking about like, okay, what are we discussing with CI/CD? Thanks, Kara, for putting the CI description here. So we kind of give,
I can add in my notes for the other two after the meeting. Yeah. It's just beginner. It's like, it's stuff that we're all familiar with, and it's just beginning to outline those terms, and then, people can add to that as well, just to add some context to the discussion.
Exactly. So some background, like taking people like slowly to the actual topic on hand, because like as we discussed as part of this vocabulary terminology discussion, like for CI and CD, like there are some, widely accepted descriptions of those, but it would still be good to write those things so people looking at this paper can understand what we are talking about, and they will realize we are talking about the same things like everyone else. And then the other heading is about like what interoperability means in CI/CD context, and similar to our past discussions, like when you talk about interoperability, people have different ideas about what it actually means for them. And perhaps you can list some of those thoughts under this heading and let people think about those things. So again, feel free to put your thoughts directly to the document, and everyone should have permission to edit the document directly. So you don't have to propose, you just edit it and we work on it. And the next topic is key considerations, constraints, and concerns. Like again, this is taking people a bit deeper in the topic, followed by some trends, like how we identified some trends that's already happening, like events in CI/CD or reusable libraries and so on, talking about some of those trends. And we have some candidates who can contribute to these parts, like for events in CI/CD, we have Ravi, we have Emil and Andreas and Ramin looking after this work stream. So Ravi already responded here. And for reusable libraries, we can do similar thing like pointing to current stacked on hand chart or Go SCM type of stuff as an examples, followed by some case studies so people can relate themselves to the other people or organizations having challenges in their CI/CD implementations, especially regards to interoperability. And finally, the future, like what are we trying to, what do we expect to achieve as part of this special interest group or under Continuous Therefore Foundation or elsewhere. And finally, conclusion, call for action. So this is the outline of the proposed paper, and I just shut up now, and please, everyone, just share what you think.
Yeah, I mean, so I volunteered to put something under the user category. I'm kind of writing that up now because, I don't want to like have half a paragraph at a time in draft form in there. I'd rather just kind of put the draft in. So I'll be dropping that in as soon as I'm done with that, probably by the end of next week or so.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, and depending when you need it from the interoperability working group or the event working group, we can start adding some more stuff. I think we're having some more meet. We can start talking about our thought process, and not too many concrete achievements yet, but I think we're moving towards that.
Thanks, Ravi. Anyone else?
In terms of Jenkins X and Tecton, I honestly can't remember what I agreed to on those two. I mean, you could definitely write on those two, but I was thinking that if I wrote on how Jenkins X is approaching GitOps would be one approach. I'm just thinking like what case study would be maybe most interesting or relevant. But I guess I can think about it further and then send you a draft.
Yeah. I've seen your comment there. I was like, yeah, great to see.
Okay.
Yeah. So any other project or user wants to add case studies? Like I see Cameron here. Like I think you mentioned on Slack that you are interested in contributing to white paper, anything from Spinnaker community or Armory.
Oh, hey, yeah. We can add some case studies on here. That would definitely work. I would have to think of a good user to target, I guess, for this. But yeah, we could add some case studies on this.
That would be great. Thanks, Cameron. So
I also think, sorry, Emil, I also think we should add a case study from Ericsson showing how we have tackled interoperability. I've been thinking about that a bit, if I should provide it here, and I think we should. It's just a matter of getting the time to do it. At least I would like to do it.
Thanks, Emil. And Jeremy, I think that phone number is you, yeah? Anything you want to contribute from Zool side? Because you have many case studies already.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a whole page full of Zool case studies that we could easily add in there, but you're looking for something that's interoperability specific. Wondering which facets of interoperability would be most interesting, which gaps you think you need to fill in the write-up, like if there's some that aren't as well addressed by some of the other CI systems case studies. I know one that comes to mind, we just talked to a user who is using multiple different code hosting and code review platforms, and that's one of the reasons why they're using Zool, is because they can basically do cross-project change dependencies between Gerrit and GitLab and GitHub. So they can have a pull request in GitHub that depends on a change for a different project in Gerrit and have them tested together. Is that like the sort of interoperability angle or one of the angles that you want addressed?
I think that would be great, because like as you mentioned, like this the different SCM systems or code review systems, and you have dependencies for the software that might be hosted on those different systems, and that would be a great case study actually, because people are using that, and that would be great if you can contribute something.
Okay, sure. Yep, I can check in something from that. I wasn't sure if that was one of the kinds of interoperability you were attempting to focus on with the white paper. So
I think, like, again, like when we talk about CI/CD, we tend to talk about like generally the traditional CI/CD tools like Jenkins, Tekton, or Zool, or Spinnaker type of tools, but like the surrounding ecosystem as well. People are, working on different types of systems, and again, in the end, those systems interface with CI/CD systems and tools. So at least to me, it makes sense to, have a case study like that to visualize or make it more visible for other people to see. Yeah, you can do that if you have that type of setup with like GitHub, GitLab, Gerrit, whatever. And these are the ways how other people are addressing those issues. So I think it would be valuable.
okay, cool.
Okay. So anyone else? I think we are getting somewhere. I feel we have quite many things to share with the world in this area. But then the document, you have the link to the document on HackMD and on the mail list, and we can continue thinking and drafting some stuff here it doesn't have to be full text, but some ideas like as a comment or as some text directly on the document. And then we will revisit this topic regularly to check the progress. And perhaps by end of next month, we can set a deadline for ourselves at least to, you know, say, okay, now we have the idea about how the paper would look like. Should we target like end of Q4 or beginning of 2021 to, you know, publish this paper, or even earlier or later, depending on how the things go. And then we reach out to CD Foundation to get support with regards to, you know, how to make this more attractive, or how to address different type of audiences like the decision makers and so on, and then see where we end up. And Tracy said last week that she will help with those parts, so we can bug Tracy when we have something ready to be passed to CD Foundation staff. Okay, then I think we are done with this topic, and then we can move to the next topic, which is Ramin presenting Tekton CD at eBay. Ramin, let me stop sharing and you give it a try.
Okay. I'm just sharing my screen. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. My name is Ramin Akbari. I'm a principal architect at eBay. I work for the newly formed engineering experience and ecosystems. I have to get that one out. It's a brand new organization that just got formed with the chief architect of the company, Randy Shoup, at the head. And this organization is in charge of all variety of support to both internal and external developers at the company, including frameworks, development frameworks, all sorts of tooling, CI tooling, CD tooling, workshops, developer advocacy, DevOps, you name it. We basically serve the entire developer ecosystem of the company, as well as the very healthy API developers, API development community that is outside of eBay. My charge at eBay, or my mission, I should say, has been for the past 5 years to essentially to bring CD to eBay. Prior to that, we had lots of various tooling, including lots of Jenkins infrastructure for doing CI, but there wasn't anything that put the whole thing together from kind of soup to nuts. A complete continuous delivery infrastructure was not in place. So I'm going to today give you, we're going to start with, we're going to end actually with how Tekton CD is being integrated into eBay, but we're going to start with, I'm going to start with giving you sort of an overview of Kubernetes at eBay. It's very important, and it will become even more important as I start to talk about how we chose Tekton. So TES.io is the internal name of the project for Kubernetes at eBay. So TES.io is Kubernetes. It's the platform for eBay's next generation cloud. Okay. It's the internal project name for eBay's core cloud platform, and it basically offers a managed Kubernetes infrastructure to its end users. That's, in a nutshell, that's what TES.io is. It was built using really well vetted and suited OSS, open source software, such as Kubernetes, obviously, Containerd, Golang, Prometheus, and lots of others, too many to list here. It's essentially, as of currently, it exists on 85 plus clusters, internal clusters in eBay's various data centers, comprised of installed on 50,000 plus servers and growing. It pretty much leverages all the standard Kubernetes API servers, and there's no change to the API signatures. TestIO, the folks, the TestIO team took great care to leave the API signatures alone and basically support what the standard open source Kubernetes supports, so that its users can just deal with TestIO as they would with any other Kubernetes infrastructure. It features hierarchical federation with multi-cluster operators. It's got support for VM and Kata containers. And there is even a thing called running tests on top of tests. I won't go into that, but that's one of its features. It also has support for software-defined networking, the open virtual networking, storage, and other things. So in a nutshell, TestIO is just Kubernetes at eBay, plus a bunch of other CRDs and controllers and other support libraries that make it much easier to use inside the company. I'm now going to give you an overview of enterprise continuous delivery at eBay. It's known as ECD, Enterprise Continuous Delivery. This is the overview of CD at eBay. We're going to start with sort of how we arrived at where we are today. I started at eBay in 2015 and found out about a project that had been, it was an internal project, very small, that had been started in 2014, just a year before I joined. And basically started to look into it, and it turned out it was just a pure orchestrator and allowed people to create pipelines with phases that basically either called Jenkins jobs or called other internal application development infrastructure APIs to do deployments and variety of other services. But it was a very small project. It was not productized, if you're familiar with that term, to such that it could be supported, monitored and all that. It just wasn't happening. And prior to that, we had eBay relied heavily, and it still does, on a very robust Jenkins, or I should say CI as a service, internal service that we have that basically does provisioning of Jenkins servers on the fly and makes it very easy for folks at eBay to create Jenkins servers and configure them and do what they need to do. ECD does orchestration of those Jenkins servers by allowing people to create phases that calls their Jenkins jobs and in order or in parallel. We have support for parallel phases as well as sequential phases. At the time, there was a survey done of existing open source software tools to see if something out there in the world could provide the CD orchestration that was required at eBay. Nothing really presented itself. The things just were not mature enough, or either if they were mature, they were very difficult to adopt to the existing eBay application lifecycle management tooling. So in 2016, the CD team formally formed and basically took on the task of rewriting this internal tool and productizing it. And there was also another tool created for called MyStage for automating of feature pool creation. In 2017, ECD and MyStage became fully supported and monitored products with the CD team as a support team. We provided workshops, onboarded many teams at eBay, and helped the internal eBay developers with a variety of unblocking a variety of blockers that they had. Some of it with our own internal frameworks. A lot of it was just they had a hard time putting together unit tests that were properly mocked, and it was just a lot of things that the development community needed help with, and that's what the CD team stepped in to provide that before those teams could onboard themselves onto CD tooling with ECD. And in 2019, we kind of wanted to go back. We wanted to take another fresh look at the market to see what was out there. Obviously, there was the move to Kubernetes was heavily moving on at that time. It is since Test.io, meeting Kubernetes at eBay, is the move forward strategy for all of our application platforms. It was the team that got put together, the cloud native application team at eBay, decided that what we really ought to look for is an open source project that provides for continuous delivery orchestration natively on Kubernetes. The first thing we actually looked at was Knative, with Knative build pipelines, which then quickly in, I think it was end of 2018 or beginning of 2019, that sub-project of Knative got ripped out and became its own project, and that's where enter Tecton CD, and that's how we ended up with deciding to integrate with Tecton CD, integrate our continuous delivery tooling with Tecton CD. I'll give you this is a quick overview of our existing ECD architecture prior to Tecton CD being integrated. It essentially is, can you folks see my cursor moving around?
I can't see it.
You can't?
Oh, actually, I see it now. It's
Okay.
a little slow to paint, man.
All right, okay. What we have are a group of microservices. One of them here, ECD PES, is not so much a microservice anymore. It's actually turned into a bit of a monolith, but nevertheless, these different services, we have ECD UI. This is what the users primarily deal with when it comes to creation of their pipelines. We have ECD proxy, which fields calls from both GitHub webhooks as well as ECD UI, which then proxies them to either ECD PES, which is the pipe service. And I've got the legend here. You can see pipeline exchange service. PDS stands for Pipeline Definition Service. As of currently, ECD stores its pipeline definitions in MySQL, and along with a few other things having to do with pipeline definitions. It uses ECD PES uses MongoDB to store the pipeline runs, phase runs, and any of the information that's all the results and what have you get stored in MongoDB. ECD PES, being the main orchestrator, is the thing that basically reads definitions of the pipelines from from the PDS service, from the definition service, and then orchestrates calls to the with its of the phases to the various services, the backend services that we have. Obviously, GitHub is one of them. Our CI as a service infrastructure, which comprises, is all Jenkins basically. It calls those Jenkins jobs to satisfy the results that the pipeline needs. Well, our CMPass APIs are essentially our legacy deployment APIs. MyStage, as I mentioned, is our internal provisioning tool for automated provisioning of feature pools. SAST is our static security scanning backend system. And then they have APIs for us to be able to do static scanning of any code base for security vulnerabilities. And then we have our tracking APIs, which are just user tracking cookies. It checks for existence of extremely important user tracking cookies that we need. This is how the thing, ECD runs today. There's a bunch of business logic that's been packed into ECD PES as of today. And this is the piece that we started to see, okay, you know, if we're gonna start to integrate with something with a different orchestration engine, we really want to offload this monolith to something that's open source, okay? And at that point, we decided, all right, Tecton CD is the thing that we want to use to with our existing ECD pipeline execution service. So in this first phase, we will introduce Tecton pipelines with some of our own internal developed images. That's really the task client, so that while Tecton is running the orchestration, it's our task client that ends up doing the calls to these various different business logic as microservices. So all this stuff that you saw in this picture here, these different various business logic that was packed in to this monolith of a service, we are basically breaking those out into different microservices so that our Tecton task client can call them individually and aggregate their results and store stuff still in MongoDB, the same place that ECD PES today is storing it. ECD PES, this box represents what you saw in this box earlier. So the two systems in phase one of this revamp basically live side by side. And we will decide which projects, internal projects, end up doing their CD orchestration, either through the legacy ECD PES, or we start to change the GitHub webhook to hit Tecton triggers, which then hits our Tecton pipelines, whose definitions will then be stored in GitHub. So obviously we will have we have tasks on our plate to migrate these ECD PDS definitions to Tecton pipeline YAML specs to do exactly that. So this is phase one. Phase two, and this we have lots of work to do to get this working, but we're in the middle of this right now. Phase two, as you can see, the picture changes to where you don't see ECD PES anymore. At this point, all of the legacy pipelines have been, whose definitions were in a MySQL database, have now been interpolated and translated to GitHub, Tecton pipeline definitions that are now stored in GitHub. And ECD proxy still exists to be able to bring field calls from our ECD UI to the, we have a microservice that basically runs Tecton workloads, which then communicates with Tecton pipelines running in our clusters. And this part of the picture has not changed. It does exactly what it used to do, except now we also have another microservice that is essentially takes care of anything having to do with events that are propagated out of our microservices, which then we use, just basically use a Kafka infrastructure internally to report back the completion, failure, or whatever have you back to our task, our Tecton task client. So this, we want this to be the eventual picture. And this is how we will migrate from running continuous delivery pipelines with our legacy ECD pipeline execution service, which was the old orchestrator, to using integrating with Tecton as our integrator, as our orchestrator. And basically the rest of the system remains exactly as is. The ECD UI will render Tecton pipelines just like it renders ECD PES pipelines today. So this is the future picture, and we are very excited to be able to get to this point. This right here is just an example of a typical typical PR pipeline that we want eBay developers to use. We already have PR pipelines as well as delivery pipelines working, delivery and release pipelines working with ECD PES, but this is a kind of a depiction of how it would work with Tecton. We have either the developer themselves or our internal platforms, framework services issuing PRs to an environment GitHub repo or the code GitHub repo, and that triggers Tecton pipelines to run. Basically a build and test, a build and unit test happens. The Canico image, Canico is used to create the image, which is then sent to ECR. ECR is our internal container repository. Think of it as Docker Hub at eBay, and which is then pushed on to a deployment, to a preview, a dev zone preview pod, and then tests are ran against that preview pod. These would be integration tests or any other kinds of tests that the group has seen fit. And I put this picture of Jenkins that the group has, the development group at eBay has the option of using both calling Jenkins to do those tests as well as just doing the tests directly from the Tecton pipeline, which then at the end of the process, the PR is complete. It has either failed the PR or it has passed the PR, and it will report its results to the pipeline control service. It's another microservice that we have, which then uses other ECD services to update the PR page for the development team's code base. And you can see this whole thing is running on Test.io. This is again on Kubernetes. This is a typical PR pipeline. And then what we're going to use to depict this whole thing, I had put in here, Is it Tecton dashboard UI? Is it the ECD UI? What are we going to use to depict these pipelines? Frankly, we're not fully sure about that yet. We're not fully set on that yet. We could end up updating ECD UI to do this, or we'll take another look at Tecton dashboard to see where it's at the time we get ready to do this. But this is something we'll have to, a decision we'll have to make at that point. This is essentially the same thing, but instead of a pipeline being kicked off based on a PR, this pipeline would be kicked off based on a merge of that PR to the master or release branch for the project, kicks off a PR pipeline, the same mechanism, do a building unit test, again, build an image, move on to doing another deployment and testing to a preview pod, then move on to deploying it to our integration environment, which is our staging environment. And then more tests are ran against that pod living in, or that deployment living in the staging environment. And then at that point, we have we have a requirement, internal company requirement for a manual approval phase. So the pipeline needs to pause at that point and basically allow that, notify the developer, hey, your pipeline is successful to this point. We are ready for production deployment. What do you want to do? They can either cancel it at that point, or they can say, okay, I approve, and please resume the pipeline. And at that point, the pipeline should resume, move on to doing a deployment attempt onto our, what we call TFD production clusters. TFD stands for Test Federated Deployments. This is that federation that I spoke about when I talked about features that TestIO has. It's a very robust, federated, multi-data center, federated deployment strategy and tooling. This will kick off that and get it done. And at that point, at the end of the process, what we want to be able to do is just run some smoke tests against that federated deployment to be able to tell, did everything, is everything okay still after all that? So as you can see, multiple testing cycle points along the way before this thing becomes available to users of our production systems. Okay, and pretty much that's it. And I have my contact info there, and I'll take any questions you have right now.
How many people are working on that team?
The CD team?
Yeah.
We have currently about 4 people, actually. It's a very small team. Now, mind you, the ECD was designed from the get-go to be a pure orchestrator. So it itself doesn't do the build. It's calling other things to do the build, other things to do the deployments. So that our CI as a service, Jenkins infrastructure, there's another team that takes care of that. So at some point, I want to have a talk with the Tecton folks about this portion of the requirement that we have at eBay for being able to pause and resume pipelines. It's something that Tecton doesn't currently support, but it'll definitely be something that I can work with the working group to implement, because this is something that we absolutely need at eBay, and I would imagine at other companies as well.
Ramin, I think Christy has a question on the chat. If you
I'm sorry. Should I stop? I should stop sharing. So I'm just
no, yeah.
Unless people can hear me without if it's not breaking
not,
up too much.
We
no,
can
it's
now, yeah.
not, yeah.
Okay, I thought you did see my question because you started talking about manual approval right then, which was just I was wondering how you were doing the manual approval. But we actually I don't know if you've noticed the custom tasks project in Tecton. I think will help a lot with that because, like you said, we're not supporting it very well right now.
Yeah, so that's okay. As of right now, what ECD does, it orchestrates the pipeline all the way to pre-production. It could even there is a small environment inside our production network zone called pre-production. It's essentially one or two instances of the application that has access to the same production services and systems that the real application would in production. So it's able to orchestrate it up to that point. But when it comes to actually getting the manifest deployed onto production servers, that's something that a developer or a QA person in charge of that would have to go and click a button in a UI that we have in our application lifecycle management tool called Altus. And they have to do that manually. And that is a company requirement. We have to do, another person has to take action. A human has to take action to deploy things into production. That's why the pause is needed.
You also probably explained this already, but in the diagrams, MongoDB, is that pretty much is that like a way to store information that's not about what's happened that's outside of the cluster, or is that part of the actual like execution of the pipelines?
It's the execution of the pipelines. It is the thing that stores the results of the executions of both the pipeline phases as well as the information about the results of the pipeline itself. As of right now, Tecton stores the results of its pipeline run basically in the pipeline run CRD, okay, and pipeline run, task run CRDs. There's not enough information in there to fulfill all the rest of the thing that ECD needs. So the results are being stored in MongoDB as of right now. As we work with the Tecton working group to come up with a better, a more scalable, and then let's not forget that when you store things as CRDs, you start to run into the etcd limit for the API server that in your cluster. That's something that we actually have to struggle with. We have these are shared clusters, lots of workloads running. That etcd instance we could overburden it if we're not careful. So we have thousands and thousands of pipelines that need to run with lots of information being stored about those. And I'm not sure if the Kubernetes API server etcd instance can handle it all. This is why MongoDB was chosen, something that's being internally managed by our internal infrastructure and scaled out as we need it. Anyway, if there's no other questions, I will stop sharing. Thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot for presenting, Ramin. And as usual, if you could store the slides on the presentations repository on GitHub, and people can take a look at it. offline, and the recording should be available coming days, which will be included in HackMD.
Not a problem.
So,
Is
yeah.
that repository, is that part of the HackMD document? Is it a link to it?
I will put the link right now. It's not there. I put it to chat window now, but I will include it in the HackMD as well.
That would
Thanks
be
for
really
reminding.
great. And anything
Yeah.
like that would be great to be in that agenda document. Yeah.
Yeah, I will put that right after the meeting. Yeah. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. Anyone wants to bring up any additional topic? Okay, then our next meeting will be on September 3rd, and I am not sure if we have any presentation scheduled for that. Let me quickly check that. So no, we don't have any presentation scheduled for the next meeting. So if any of the participants of this meeting is interested presenting in what they are doing, please feel free to reach out, and then we get you in the agenda for the next meeting.
I might be able to have my presentation ready. I'll let you know by next week.
Okay, then I will ping you before like that the week we will have the meeting, the week of September 3rd, to confirm if you are having it or not, so we can include it in the agenda. Thanks, Dave. Okay, then thank you everyone for joining to this meeting, and then we talk to you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks for the demo, Ramin.
Thanks.
y'all.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you all. Thank you. Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye.
Bye.